I don't know. I just hit record. I guess we'll find out.
I can see that in the upper left-hand corner of my screen.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So Ray, yesterday in automotive news, there was a headline that said federal government revises guidelines around essential workers, um, and that auto dealerships, car dealerships, should be deemed essential. Now, this federal guideline is not a mandate. Different states and their governors dictate what businesses can and can't be open, what is or isn't deemed essential. But it was a modification to the recommendations from the federal government. So as someone who worked in the car business for 43 years, and we still do, work in the car
Yeah.
business now, but on behalf of our customers, what do you think? Should car dealerships be deemed essential? And I guess I should just preface that question with, there are three departments within the dealership. And, which of those three departments, the service department, is that essential? Is the parts department essential? Is the sales department essential? What's your take on that?
Well, my take would be that the sales is really non-essential, but parts and service are essential. I think what makes parts and service essential is the absolute need to be able to keep whatever vehicles are going to be on our less traveled highways these days in good working order so that they can travel those highways. Sales, if people aren't driving as much, I don't necessarily see that as an essential business, but I understand why the federal government might deem a business that produces new car and light truck automotive sales of, well, last year's seasonal pace of over 17 million vehicles. And when you take that away from the economy, it's catastrophic. So I can understand from that perspective why it might be deemed essential, but I don't think it really is.
Well, and we've seen, I know Pennsylvania, there's one other state that is completely, maybe it's like Idaho, I don't know, Iowa. There are two states, Pennsylvania is one of them, that have completely shut down car dealerships. They're not open in any capacity for sales that is. And the dealership groups within those, like the Pennsylvania Automotive Association, Auto Dealers Association, their head has been just like really out there lobbying essentially that they should be open, for sales, because there's some data from manufacturer websites and also shopping websites like Auto Trader, Cars.com, from Edmunds that suggests that people are still shopping for cars in the same way, down a little bit, but in the same way that they had been before, but now they can't actually make a deal in Pennsylvania, for example. But does that mean they're essential? That's kind of the tug of war there.
Well, what truly makes them essential from a state's perspective is the amount of sales tax revenue that they produce.
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So when dealerships are closed completely like that, well, you're losing out on hundreds of millions of dollars of sales tax revenue. And will the dealers who aren't sitting on large cash reserves bemoan the fact that they're not allowed to be open to sell cars? Absolutely. Most businesses that would complain about having to be shut down are complaining because they're not really in a position to be able to sustain themselves and sustain their employee base if they don't have any income coming in. So I get that. Yeah, I get it. And I get why dealers who have multi-million-dollar investments in their showrooms feel that way. I just don't know that if there are less and less cars on the highways, that there's as strong a need to say that, well, we need to be open so that, the 1/10 of the normal people coming in to buy a car can actually be able to buy that car.
And you're putting people at risk because unfortunately, the unfortunate reality for the mom and pop dealerships is they're not really set up to do contactless, sales. They're really not, let alone the fact that, and there are ways to jump through these hoops, but let alone the fact that in all states you need a wet signature on the paperwork. So I was reading about a local dealership, I think it was in Omaha, and they're doing contactless, at home delivery, where the driver will bring the car, they'll bring the paperwork, they'll put the paperwork in your mailbox. You'll come out to the mailbox. The driver gets away, gets
Yeah.
a different car, or maybe goes and wipes down your car that you're about. You sign the paperwork, you put it back in the mail. I mean, it's like you're still struggling to maintain that 6 feet of distance and keep surfaces clean. So is it worth putting at risk, people's health in order to sell cars? And obviously we've seen in some states no restrictions, and in other states lots of restrictions. But where it's kind of clear across the board, regardless of what the federal government's saying, service departments, people who auto technicians, mechanics, 100% essential, because you
Yeah.
need that critical infrastructure, and transportation needs to be able to ebb and flow. New pieces of transportation, that's what's up in the air, but maintaining it, super necessary.
Yes, and I think that is essential. I guess it's up to the general public to decide what is or isn't essential. I would say, in my case, because I haven't seen my hair this long, and I don't know how many years, that, well, my barber's essential, okay, but I can't see him.
Well,
Um,
but you said it's up to the general public. It's not. It's up to our governors, and it's up to our.
well, but to a certain degree, it's still up to the general public. One of the.
It's not. You can't go to your barber.
Let me finish. Um, there's a lot of chatter these days about reopening the economy. Okay, and there's been protests in states from some people who think that we're limiting their liberties. The reopening of the economy, whether it be going to barbershops or going to automobile dealerships, is entirely dependent on whether or not the public, the buying public, is willing to participate. You can say everything's open, but if the people aren't willing to go because they're fearful that they might become sick because they went, then they're not going to go.
And
So that's what I mean by it's up to the public.
And I think you're right that it will be up to them once things are quote unquote reopened, and that's why we see this mad dash from the mom and pop dealerships to start to figure out how are we going to offer this contactless experience.
And that's the direction dealers are going to have to go. That's the direction they're going to have to figure out how to make that work, how to take cars to customers, how to deal with customers more forthrightly and openly via internet or phone, via email and phone. The mentality of how dealers do things or communicate with customers has to change. We deal with it every day where, as we discussed earlier, it's like pulling teeth trying to get information. But if less and less people are going to be willing to go into dealerships to risk their lives to buy a car, then the dealers are going to have to figure out how to adapt to be able to provide their customers with the necessary information for them to make that buying decision without ever having to come into the dealership. So dealers are going to change. The smart dealers, the progressive dealers, the ones that are going to be proactive as opposed to just strictly reactive, are going to adjust accordingly so that they can figure out how to maintain their business in times like this. And some of the older school dealers are going to have a hard time with that. They're going to struggle, and they're not going to sell as many cars as they might have or could have had they adapted.
Yep. So just coming full circle, our dealerships, essential businesses, the federal government says, yeah, they are. You should be able to go lease a car or buy a car tomorrow if you wanted to. Our dealerships an essential business from the state's perspective. The governor of Pennsylvania says no.
No.
The governor of Maryland says sure, by appointment only.
Yeah.
Our dealerships an essential business from a human level. Time will tell, but we think and we see trends already that it's going to transition. The business is going to transition to being more online, contactless, and that dealers are going to have to adapt to that. So it's interesting to see the federal government revise, probably based off of a lot of lobbying from a lot of really wealthy dealers. But at the end of the day, we get to make up our minds if dealerships are essential or not, and people will probably vote with their pocketbooks, and they're going to make that decision online. They're going to buy cars online in the future. That's the reality of the situation.
I would agree with everything you just said.
I must be your son then.
Well, you must be.
If you enjoy content like this, if you're interested in learning the ins and outs of the business, subscribe. Ray and I are here, and we're chatting about everything that's going on in the car business. Big picture, small picture, the day in the life of what we do, buying cars for our customers. So make sure you hit that subscribe button and toggle notifications as well. And we've got all sorts of written guides too. So on yourautoadvocate.com, there's all sorts of information there.
Very good. I couldn't have said it better if I tried.
You taught me everything I know.
I doubt that. You still have a lot to learn.
Also, Mom. I got to give Mom a lot.
Yeah, I think you should. Yes.